by the IEDs that are mostly fabricated and transported from Iran, still are, if you keep that organization on the list. And again, we acceded, and again, we've been not only disappointed, but absolutely compromised by that agreement. This is a regime that cannot be negotiated with. It is a regime that cannot be trusted. And it's a regime that continuously seeks to destroy freedom and the protectors of freedom. In 1996, Khobar Towers, as you know, was attacked in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. 19 American soldiers, 122 others were wounded, 19 were killed. Dozens of Saudis were killed in an operation that was funded, sponsored, and organized by the IRGC. So when we finally got access in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the people who were responsible for that bombing, they said, we were trained in the Bekaa Valley by the IRGC. We got passports in the Iranian embassy in Damascus, and we got $250,000 in cash from General Sharifi to conduct the operation. But that set of facts was not popular in Washington at the time. The administration did not want to hear that the IRGC had murdered 19 Americans and killed many others. For the same reason, the Secretary of State said, why are you fingerprinting and photographing the Iranian wrestlers who are coming into the United States? And I said, Madam Secretary, it's because in those wrestling teams, if you'll notice, one of the athletes is a little out of shape. Well, that's the MOIS agent who's coming into the United States to work his intelligence network. So we made some very bad mistakes, and we're very long in correcting those mistakes. The Court of Appeals, as Judge McCasey referred to, looked at two of the three factors that go into the designation of an organization as a foreign terrorist organization. One is that it's foreign. Two is that it conducts terrorism activities. And three, that it impacts on the national security of the United States. The court said number three is not for us. That's a political decision by the executive. But as to the other two, it looked at the facts very carefully and very precisely. And the judges, two of them mostly in the concurring opinion, said that the Secretary of State had violated the constitutional rights of this organization by failing to accord due process. And in very clear language, the court said the sources that you have credited and relied upon do not, by your own determination, appear to be credible and believable sources. And they sent it back to the Secretary to look at it and to report back to the court. Hopefully that process is being done. I don't think it's a complicated process. I think we're 14 years behind the curve on this particular issue. And if there are facts, classified or not, that justify this, somebody ought to talk about it, and somebody ought to call all of us and tell us that we're making a mistake in what we're advocating here. And I don't think we're making a mistake. So I want to end by praising all of you. I think your courage, your sacrifice, the leadership here, the passion, the courage is phenomenal. I think the women who are leading this movement are an inspiration to everybody, not just to your colleagues in Iran, but to freedom fighters all over the world. And as many of our speakers said, the events As many of our speakers said, the events of the last few weeks have been phenomenal, and they do overshadow the rhetoric and even the words that we say here today. The decision by the Security Council of the United Nations sent an incredibly powerful message to the dictators in Tehran. It said two things. One, it said, time is of the essence and you're out of time. Two, it said that there is a will in the Western democratic powers who voted positively on the resolution, and not all the Western powers voted positively on the resolution. But that sent an incredible message and a message of fear to the dictators in Tehran. But it also sent an incredible uplifting morale message to the freedom fighters, the young students who are being killed and will be killed until history corrects itself here. So we're at the point of spring. Happy New Year. We're at an exciting time. And 66 years ago this month in this city, okay, one of the most murderous regimes in the history of civilization was in its waning weeks and waning months. And it was desperate, but it was out of power because the world had learned a very important lesson, that freedom, wherever it appears, wherever it has to grow, wherever it's suppressed, is an inevitable force. And I think the regime in Tehran has probably as much time as the Third Reich had 66 years ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me to Berlin to speak today. Madam President, I'm honored to be with you. I'd like to talk this afternoon about U.S. policy towards Iran since the 1979 revolution, and then suggest some ways in which this policy needs to be changed in the future. As a former director of policy planning at the State Department, it pains me to say that U.S. policy towards Iran for much of the past 3 decades has been marked more by failure than by success. The Iranian regime has not changed its behavior. It has not moderated its policies. Indeed, events in the past few years, even in the past few weeks, seem to indicate that it has adopted an even more extremist approach. A few weeks ago, I took a tour across the Middle East where I met with senior leaders and military officials. At the top of the agenda at every meeting was Iran, the threat it poses to stability in the region, its support for terrorism and Islamic extremism, and what might be done to halt its nuclear weapons program. We know that the Iranian regime continues to ignore UN Security Council restrictions on its nuclear program, and we have already seen indications that its behavior is prompting other countries in the Middle East to pursue their own independent nuclear options. We know that Iran is keeping open its nuclear weapons option and working each day to bring itself closer to producing nuclear weapons. Over the years, the United States has tried different approaches to the rulers in Tehran, from sanctions to containment to covert dialogue to publicly extending an open hand to Tehran. None of these approaches has worked. Let's recall that America's first real interaction with the Islamic Republic of Iran was over a hostage crisis, when U.S. diplomats were unlawfully seized and imprisoned for 444 days. Every U.S. president since Jimmy Carter has tried to improve relations with Tehran. All have failed. Why has the United States been so slow to realize that the Islamic Republic of Iran has no intention or capability of changing its behavior? Now, obviously, many factors have been involved in shaping U.S. policies over the years. The first factor has been a lack of understanding of the Iranian regime, starting from the very beginning. The United States was massively unprepared for the fall of the Shah. We still have no embassy or diplomats in Tehran. There are financial and commercial restrictions on Americans doing business with Iran. Few universities or colleges in America teach Farsi. Even fewer have exchange programs. The result is that very few people in the U.S. government understand the history, culture, and politics of Iran. Compounding all these impediments to understanding is the complex nature of the Iranian regime. Western terms like moderate or reformer take on wholly different meanings within the Iranian political context. Even an insider like Rafsanjani can wake up one morning and find himself on the outside, surely yet another sign of the regime's insecurity. In one sense, the regime looks and behaves like a traditional state, with elections, a parliament, and a president. Yet in another sense, it looks and behaves like a brutal theocracy